Welcome. This is our usual Thursday broadcast on our Facebook page, Visions and Voices Together. I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm thrilled that we have a special guest with us today. Chris Curry happens to also live in Idaho. Sometimes I interview guests from around the country or in other countries, and today I want to spotlight this wonderful resource that we have. And as Chris explains a little bit more about what she does, you also will know that if you don't live in Idaho, you can still receive wonderful tips, strategies, and consultation from Chris, and she can explain that in a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about why that behavior plan is failing. So if you're a parent, or sometimes we also have teachers that are on our show, and you just are kind of frustrated because things aren't going well at school, even with a behavior plan, even if they call it a positive behavior plan. And so Chris is going to help us understand how we can do less intervention and more prevention. And just to give you a quick synopsis I met Chris when I moved to Idaho. She has worked with several families that I've also been an advocate for. I always recommend her to other families, and I just think that I love her philosophy, her values, her common sense tips and strategies. Chris got her master's in special education from the University of Kansas. She founded Families Together, Inc. in Kansas. She also was involved with Families Together. And what was the exact title, Chris, for people with disabilities in Washington?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. So welcome, Chris. And if there's anything else that you would like to tell us, the other thing is she's a behavior specialist, but also a wonderful life coach. How many of us, right? I need a life coach. But she specializes in being a life coach for families that have children with disabilities. So, Chris, let us know if there's anything else that you would like to share with us, and we will get started.
Okay, well, I thank you. Great introduction. And I think that I would like to just recommend that people go to the website, and they'll see that either on the handouts that you send to them, or when we start doing the slides, they'll see the website. It's pretty easy. It's chriscurryconsulting.com, so kind of hard not to remember that. And on there, you can join the Chris Curry Club, which for $20 a month, you become a member, and then you can call me pretty much whenever you want to. And I do start out with families who have kids with behavior problems. A lot of it's school problems. They'll call and say, what do I do with the school? It's just I'm not getting what I want for my child right now. And then after a while, it does turn into life coaching for the moms who also need their own identity and want to know how to have their life, even though they have a child with disabilities. So it is interesting that it slides right over into life coaching for the moms and the dads. Most of the calls I get are conference calls. So I do get a lot of calls on behavior. Usually they have a behavior plan at the school and it's not working. A lot of children in first and second grade lately whose parents have had them fully included in preschool, want to continue doing it in elementary school. They get them into the classroom, and the teachers really don't have the tools to deal with it. So I wanted to go back to and I did type it out so I can read it, but I wanted to look at the blog that you got all this from, where it says, it's very discouraging for the teachers and the parents when they think this is great. Everybody gets together. Everybody's happy about seeing each other. They're all lovey-dovey. And then the child just starts running on top. So, having toileting accidents all the time. And suddenly the teachers are saying, well, we don't handle toileting accidents in the first grade. They'll have to go back to the life skills room. And there is a gap in how we can help children in that inclusive environment, which obviously, I believe that's where children should be as much as possible, if not all the time. So I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint if that's okay. I'm going to try sharing the screen. Here we go.
Sure.
let's
And
we
let,
can.
and let me just let people know that because if you're watching this live, Chris's face will be covered up by that red little live button in the corner that we have no control
Oh,
over. But if you watch the replay, that little live button will be gone. But Chris is
oh.
going to share her PowerPoint. And I don't know if that's as large as they go, Chris. We practice this, but or if you can enlarge that, but that will work. And so she will be sharing some tips and strategies. If you want a copy of her PowerPoint, yeah, that's bigger. Just type the word PowerPoint in the comments, and I will get you the link to the PowerPoint and also her article that she wrote about this topic. So thank you, Chris.
So our big thing that we worry about is people develop a behavior plan and then it fails. Old school behavior plans, and I think we always have to go back to it. Say, if the child does such and such, we are going to do this, and a child is going to learn from consequences. If you can get that out of your head that people learn from consequences and realize that's not why people change their behavior, then all of this material will be so simple for you to understand. So always try to normalize it and say, what's something that's happened to you where you haven't learned from the consequence? So traffic tickets. Have you ever been stopped, Charmaine, by the police? Let's just
Yes,
ever.
I had one speeding ticket one time.
Okay, so you got one speeding ticket and then so you've never gone over the speed limit again, right?
No,
Ever,
I have.
ever.
I just haven't gotten caught.
All right. So getting the speeding ticket, which is supposed to change your behavior, it's supposed to make you slow down. They give you a ticket and then you go, okay, I'll never speed again. I will always go the speed limit. But it didn't. You still go the speed limit. You're just a little more cautious and watching for the police. So that wasn't where they were going with that punisher for you, was not to make you a little more observant for policemen. That wasn't what they wanted you to do. What they wanted you to do was never go over the speed limit. And they thought if they gave you a ticket, you would never do that again. And that doesn't work. I've gotten stopped quite a bit. I know most police officers in any town that I've been in. I've become acquainted with them because I tend to be thinking about something else, tend to be late, and I tend to go too fast. So I get stopped. I don't always get tickets, which is always kind of a thrill for me not to get the ticket. But it doesn't change my behavior. That's not going to change it. What does change it for temporarily, I might slow down for a month or two and say, whoa, I can't afford another ticket if I get one. But then it creeps back up. So when we use that method with children and we say, okay, if they bite somebody, which is a common behavior in children, then we are going to put them in timeout. If they don't do what they're told to do, we're going to put them in timeout. And the behavior doesn't change. All it does is give you something to do when the child does something wrong, but it really doesn't change their behavior. So what we're going to talk about today is why is that happening and what can we do to change kids' behaviors, because that's the point. The point is a child has a behavior that isn't working for them in a positive way. It probably is working for them, but it's not working for them in the way that is a socially appropriate way. So if you throw a temper tantrum at Walmart, it probably will get you out of the store. You can probably leave at that point because you're going to have to go home because you're throwing a temper tantrum. All that's done is show you if you throw a temper tantrum, then you get to leave Walmart. It doesn't really show you how to do Walmart, which is, something that nobody really needs to learn how to do, but, it is a behavior that an area where we do have a lot of behavior problems. Busy stores, crowded, when we're taking children to events, that's when a lot of behavior problems show up. So here's my website, and you can also follow me on Facebook, and I hope you do. And also you'll see right here where I don't know if that shows a little pointer or not, you can join the Chris Curry Club and talk to me as much as you want to. And people call me at the weirdest hours of the night when the children are asleep and they go, okay, I can talk now. I'm pretty good about it. I live by myself on the top of a mountain, so I don't have a lot going on. So let's talk about why plans fail. Let's go back and talk about that, and then I'm going to show you how to write a behavior plan that won't fail, and I'm going to try to get it all done in a short amount of time. Your plan's going to fail if the plan is written with intervention strategies for the teacher or the parent once the behavior starts. So if you have a plan that waits for the behavior to happen, anything you do is going to fail because it already happened. I remember a principal once saying to me, and I'm going to leave this up here so you can read the rest of it. The principal said, when the child pushed by him, he said, that is just not going to happen. And I said, that just did happen. So obviously it's going to happen. And he said, well, I'm not going to tolerate that. And I said, but what are you going to do? Because he already did it. So the next time you see him coming toward you, you need to say something to him. You need to make sure you can slow him down before he has to push by you, or move. That would be another way to get the child not to push you. You can move. And those are prevention strategies. Those are common sense strategies. So many times I would go to schools and they say, the child's kicking me, he's kicking. And the kids would be wearing like steel-toed boots. And I said, well, first take the boots off, and second, back up. So there's always things you can do when you see a child is going to do a behavior quickly to make sure that the behavior doesn't really happen. So we want to make sure that a behavior plan is going to be looking at what you can do ahead of time. And that's what we're talking about here. Your plan will succeed if the program focuses on preventing the behaviors by setting up environments where you don't need to do it. So if you go to Walmart and you don't want to be there and you go, Mom, can we leave? And Mom goes, sure. You don't have to throw a temper tantrum. If Mom goes, in a minute, let me get a few things, starts adding stuff on there, then you're going to throw a temper tantrum because what you used, which was very appropriate, didn't work. So you're going to use something that works better. And now we have a parent that wants to get rid of temper tantrums. Maybe you need to think about why you went to Walmart and some things you can do. Now I have a blog. I'm going to unshare for a minute, stop sharing just for a minute and talk about this. I have a blog that where I talk about Walmart. Because for parents, you have to go to the store, and most of the time you have to take your children. So if you're going to take a child to an area anywhere where it's going to be difficult, I don't care if it's church, or if they're going to have to get on the bus, or go to a store, there has to be a visual schedule of some sort. You can write it down, you can have pictures, but you have to use visual schedules if you know it's going to be problematic. So before you go into Walmart, you make out a list. If you know your child can't handle Walmart for more than 15 minutes, don't make a list with 20 items in it. Make 2 or 3 items because you're practicing. You have to practice how to do all these things. Part of prevention is learning. You have to learn how to do it. So you're going to practice going to Walmart. You're going to write down a list of 3 things. You're going to get toothpaste, you're going to get chips, and you're going to get toilet paper. That's what I always get at Walmart. And you're going to get those 3 things. You show the child the list, you say, that's what I'm going to get, and then we're going to leave. It's very concrete. It's not, oh, it'll just be a minute. It's not, it won't take very long. And then you say, we're going to walk in the store. We're going to get these 3 items. We're going to go pay for these 3 items. We're going to leave the store. Do you want anything on the list? And the child said, I would like some candy on the list. So you add candy, but you add it. So now we have 4 things. We're going to get those 4 things, and we're going to leave. You go in the store, and it's really nice if you know the layout of the store so you're not looking for the items. If you check that out before you go. There is a great guy at the Walmart in Moscow, but if you have to take a child with autism, I would go pick up Steve. Steve works in the hunting section. Steve knows where every item is in the store. I always go to Steve first. I show my list. I said, tell me how to get these. He shows me how to go through and get everything very quickly. He said he knows every item in Walmart and Kmart, and I believe Steve. So you need to know your layout of your store. You go in, you get the items, and here's what you don't do. You don't look at something and go, oh, I needed paper towels. Let me throw those in. You don't do that because that says we're not shopping for the list anymore. We are walking around the store willy-nilly throwing things in our basket. And that means I can do it too. And there's no rules anymore. So then You can't do that. You have to follow the rule. Now, what if you realize you do need paper towels? You get back out to your car, you make another list, and you see if you can go back in the store and get a couple more items. If you can't, you just don't do it. You just order the paper towels online and have them delivered. That's because that's all about looking at what your child can tolerate and preventing the problem from happening. And if you get in the store, now this gives you some catch-up. You get in the store, you get one thing, and you can catch your child's behavior. You say, whoa, going down, meltdown happening. You say one thing, oh, I really don't need the other 3 things on my list. And you're out of the store. No temper tantrum. You're just being very intuitive. It's not going to work today. The biggest thing with behavior is don't push it. Know when you know your child well enough, and the teacher should know your child, when you can give it that little extra. I'm going to demand a little bit more from you. And when you can't, and when you can't, you don't. And you never think, never do this, never go, maybe this time it'll be okay. Because it won't be. It's never going to be okay. It's a hard thing for the child to do. So that's what we're talking about, just a lot of prevention before you go in. And if you can prevent problems from happening, you don't have to worry about what you're going to do after they happen, because they're never going to happen. Now, why this keeps showing up? There we go. Let's go to the next one.
And let me just give a quick shout out to, we've got quite a few people watching, so I want to recognize Marlo's from Pennsylvania. We have Heidi with us, Shannon, who has worked with Chris with her daughter, Lissa, who lives up by you, Chris, and we have Dana, and who else? Stacy and Lisa and Jen is from the Northwest area, and Jean. So we've got quite a few viewers. Type in the word PowerPoint if you want the handouts, and I'll have to come back after the video is over and give you the link for the PowerPoint and also her article about behavior plans failing. And Melissa came in too. So, hey, Melissa. So, yeah, feel free to type in questions, and at different times we'll pause and answer questions. But I love the ideas that Chris is sharing, because it's like, that's the kind of stuff that parents need, right? That real life, I've got to go to the store. How do I make this happen? So I'm just enjoying this, and so many others are appreciating you, Chris. So carry on.
All right. So the first thing, anytime you're talking about behavior, you have to be systematic. So you have to kind of step out of, I love my child, he's so wonderful and he's so cute, or the hopeful, I know it's going to be okay, or I'm just going to plow through it. I don't care. I'm just going to plow through it. Or the threats. If you act up in Walmart, then you're going to have to, you're going to lose TV for the rest of your life. Those threats don't make any sense to a child who's getting overwhelmed in Walmart, because they can't help it. And you have to really respect your child's disability. If you have a child with autism, a young child with Down syndrome, a young child with developmental delays, you have to respect that. You are asking a lot of that person. There are stores that I can't go into because I don't like the fluorescent lights in them. There are stores, I never go to Costco. Sorry, if those of you who like Sam's Club and Costco, I never go. It's too much stuff. It's too overwhelming. I would be in there for days before I could sort out what I needed. So for a child, even going to a small grocery store, it might be too overwhelming for them. And you have to know what your child can really cope with and what they can't. And of course, you never want to take them anywhere when they're tired and hungry, which eliminates dropping in after you pick them up at school. So it is systematic. It is being organized. You can help with the behavior problems if you can do that. Because if you don't, and you have to deal with the behavior problem, it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting trying to get a child to calm down who's having a meltdown. And as the child gets bigger, I work with some teenage boys who, when they have a meltdown, they'll turn around and hit you, and it hurts. And it can be very, very dangerous. And then we're doing all sorts of weird things like calling the police. So let's make sure we can prevent them. So first, you have to identify when your child has difficulty. So all kids have trouble getting out of a car to go somewhere. That's hard. You stop at the store and they have to get out of the car. Usually their shoes are off by now. If it's winter, they've got to put coats on and mittens and a scarf, and they don't want to. So getting out of a car is just major difficulties. Kind of program that in and decide before you get out of that car exactly how much clothing do they need to walk to the store, because maybe they don't need their mittens on or their jackets. We can just run them in and do what we need to do. They probably need their shoes. So we want to identify when they have difficulty. Is it transitioning? Is it getting into the car? Is it getting out of the car? Is it getting dressed in the morning? I've had children that can't wake up in the morning. The parents, I can't get them moving. They're so slow. That's a child that's having problems in school probably. Something's going on later in the day, and they're just not wanting to get ready for that day. They're slowing down to a crawl. And as soon as you see your child starting to do that, oh, they're having trouble getting dressed in the morning, or they get dressed really well, and then they can't get their socks on. They're fine till we get to the shoes. Those are all things that say, I don't want to transition, and you need to look and see what's going on at school. So you want to identify and name all those problematic activities. And you want to keep a list of those on your phone or on a neon sign in front of you or something, so that when you bump into them, you're not like, oh, my goodness, once again, that was a problem. You know they're going to be problem activities. You've already got a plan to deal with them. And then you analyze what's going on with your child at the moment. Maybe 90% of the time they go in shopping and they're just fine. But today you picked them up and they're just a little out of sorts. So is this the day to do that? Is this the day to check in with them and say, can you deal with this? I just need one thing. Can I run in and get one thing? Can you do that? And if they look at you and go, oh yeah, I can do it, but you know they can't, say, you know what, I'm going to just figure out another way to make that recipe. Of course, you notice I put all these moms at home taking care of their children. I realize those moms that are working and picking up their kids like I was, that 20-minute transition from daycare to home, I can't help you with that. That's just torture. That is just torture. So I'm sorry, my phone just buzzed on me, so I'm going to just get rid of that. And fourth, develop strategies that are in place prior to any problematic activity happening. So you need to know your plan. You need to have it in place. You can't be wing it mom when you have a child with a disability. That's over. Other people might be able to wing it. Other people can say, if you do that again, you're going in timeout. And maybe the children are not going to do it again, or it doesn't matter because they got through it. It wasn't awful. You can't do that, because every time you have a problem with a child with a disability, they're learning the wrong things. And they have so much to learn that's appropriate. We can't afford to practice the wrong stuff. So it's going to be very, very important that parents sit down and go, okay, so you've done all this. You've got a child that's, your kid's usually okay, but you go to the store every once in a while and they act out. Those times you go, okay, I'm going to bring the list out. I'm going to do what Chris Curry says. I don't have to do it every time. Sometimes it's okay. But if this doesn't work, if just putting a simple prevention thing doesn't work, if you did everything on here, you analyzed what was going on, you developed some strategies, and it just still isn't working, then we do have to go into a model that is a little more difficult, which is where we're going to take care of that behavior problem.
And so, Chris, let me pause here, and Melissa has a question, and so this might be a good time to look at that. She said, my son has moderate ASD, just got detention yesterday. He had trouble comprehending the classwork. He lashed out at the teacher and left the classroom. He has a positive behavior plan, which it seems they are not even following. The principal threatened my son if my son gets into trouble that he will have Saturday school. But when my son told him that I, meaning Melissa, don't have a car, the principal said, that's not my problem, just walk. I live far away from his high school and he has no sense of direction. I will be having his annual IEP review on November 27th. So I think this is, she's identified a couple things. One, that they do have a positive behavior plan. It's not being followed. and then getting into these kind of power struggles with teachers and principals. And so I don't know if you want to comment on that now, or you want to go through some more of your content and come back to that.
No, I think it's a good time to comment on that because I think the child took care of the problem himself. He didn't understand what was going on in the class. He got very upset about it and he left the room. That should be in his behavior plan. That probably should be his behavior plan. If you can't handle the stress, leave the room. And then there needs to be go to the principal and discuss what was going on. The Saturday school, no, he shouldn't have Saturday school at all. That should be written in the IEP that he never gets Saturday school. You're not following the school discipline. And you can see where it didn't make the Saturday school, he didn't go, oh my gosh, I'm going to be really good so I don't get Saturday school. He immediately came up with, well, we don't have a car, which that has nothing to do with the situation here. Totally missing the whole concept that I'm telling you, if you don't measure up to my standards, I'm going to put more punishers on you, which was what the principal was saying. The student just went to, well, that just won't work. I'm sorry. Well, you missed the point there. So obviously he doesn't get consequences. They're not going to change his behavior because they don't make any sense to him. A typical child would have just gone, okay, well, we don't want to get Saturday school, and it would automatically register. If Saturday school didn't work, then they'd come up with some other equally horrible thing to make me do. So, but that didn't strike this child. So we have a child who has a plan. I get upset, I leave the classroom. So that's good. That is very good. Leaving is always a good option. It's where you go after you leave. So he needs a place to go where he can talk to someone about it. If he has a phone, he leaves the room and calls his mom. That usually is one of the most effective things for kids who struggle, is to leave the room and call their mom on the phone, and then mom can walk them through the next few steps. Schools don't like that because, oh my gosh, we can't have cell phones in our school. Well, I don't think he's going to be sitting there playing on Facebook all day. He's not going to be texting everyone in class. That's not going to happen with this child. He's simply going to use it to call his mom. Well, what if he overuses that? Well, guess what? Mom doesn't pick up the phone. That's all. So you have a lot of control over your child calling you, just don't answer. So I think that is, when you go back to the IEP, you look at what he's doing now that's working. You write a behavior plan that stipulates completely in there that you will not follow the school-wide discipline plan. That's out the window. He doesn't get detention. He doesn't get Saturday school, but he needs to learn to deal with stress, and we're going to teach him how to do that. So when he gets a job, I have a young man that I'm working with who lost his job because he got very upset, and it was hurting him physically. Nobody was helping him deal with it, and he walked out of the building, but he was angry by that time and put some holes in the walls and got fired. So we want to make sure that someone can learn, I can't do it, I'm going to walk away. And even if the solution is that class is too hard, we're not going to send you back there. We're not going to make you deal with something you can't deal with. You can't do that job. It's too stressful for whatever reason. That's okay. You can recognize that. What we can't deal with is someone being violent. So the next step after leaving and not being violent is leaving and being violent. So we want to make sure that never happens for this young man. That's probably what she needs. Call me, join the club. I'll go to the IEP with you by phone, and I do that a lot. I sit in, and I look much bigger when you're only listening to me. So when I'm on the phone with an IEP, they have no idea. I could be who I am, what I look like, and it's much more effective than when you can see me. Because when they see me, they go, oh, she probably can't do much. So I don't know. I've always found that the voice must sound much taller. So I want to go over, these are some steps that you need to consider before you start working on a behavior problem. Because a lot of times people will have behavior problems that it's a behavior problem for one person, not a behavior problem for another person. I worked with children with very severe disabilities. Grinding teeth drove some teachers crazy. Never bothered me. I don't know why it didn't. It's not good for the child to do. We don't want them to grind their teeth, but I never saw it as a behavior problem. It was just something we wanted to make sure they had a lot of oral stimulation and some chewing going on and didn't ruin their teeth. So the first thing you have to decide, is it really worth the time to address a behavior problem? Is this something that you want to go through the whole process? Because when you sit down and address a behavior problem and you do it seriously, you're not going to do it quick and dirty like the first thing we said. You're really going to figure out what the problem is and how to get rid of it. You better be ready to put some time into it. And if it's not that big a deal, let's try to solve it easily. Now, one of the problems that a lot of children have is they get up and wander around the classroom. So I will go and observe. Let me just stop so you can see me talking here. I'll go and observe the classroom, and I will look at how many children are wandering around the classroom. And in a second grade classroom, lots of kids are wandering. They get up to sharpen pencils, they get up to return something, they put their stuff away, but it looks very purposeful. But the child with the disability just gets up and appears to just wander. So this is a behavior problem when you go, okay, are we going to put tons of man hours into solving this problem, or are we just going to put another desk in the room? So if the child sits in the back of the room and then they start to wander, we say, oh, you want to go sit in the desk in the front of the room, and he learns to just pace back and forth between desks. The teacher knows where he's going, so she's not going, where is he going? I don't understand this. And he's learned he can still get up and move when he wants to. So we don't need a behavior plan for that. That's just, oh, let's try this. And a lot of times we don't need the whole behavior plan. We just need to do something quick and dirty that makes a lot of sense, and everybody can just get on board very quickly. So the second thing you want to say, is it a problem for everybody? Some teachers go, it doesn't bother me when he wanders in the classroom. It just seems to bother the reading teacher or the science teacher. So then it's not a behavior problem. A behavior problem bothers everybody across the board. If it doesn't bother everybody, the person that it bothers needs to figure out a way the child can do that behavior and not be a problem. Now, is it as bad as it seems is data. One little guy that I worked with would scream, and he could scream so loud that the entire school would go, ah. This piercing scream through an entire school, they would hear it. And they said, what are we going to do about this? So they brought me in, and he was fine when he was on the computer. And I said, well, it's really not a screaming problem. It's a compliance problem, because you don't want to leave him where he's fine, and he's fine on the computer. But the problem was, because he used to scream 5 or 6 times a day, and people were doing this 5 or 6 times a day, when we finally got it down to maybe once a month, people were still saying he screams all the time. So we had to keep data and post it in the teacher's lounge so they could see, no, he doesn't scream all the time. But as soon as he does it once, it was like, it made everybody go cringe again, and they kind of had PTSD back to when he was screaming 4 or 5 times a day. So we want to make sure we're taking data on a behavior. Does it really happen that much? Does this high school student leave a classroom every 5 minutes? Or does he leave it once a week? He gets stressed and he leaves. That's not a behavior problem. That's a good thing. This one, however, does it limit the places your child can go? That's very important. Anytime your child has a behavior that you say, well, I can't take him here because of the behavior, that's a problem. Especially if it's a place where the whole family goes. I can't take my child to church because of the behavior problem. I can't take my child out shopping because of his behavior problems. I can't take my child to family functions because of the behavior problem. That's really limiting the experiences your child can have, and that is a behavior problem. And that's one where you're going to say, okay, we need strategies to deal with this, and we're going to come up with how to prevent the behavior problem again from happening by looking at exactly what triggers the behavior problem and how we can avoid it. The next one we want to look at for behavior problems, and I go through these because people forget this. If a child only has a few behaviors, is it ethical to change it? So we have our screaming child. Can we ethically say we're going to teach this child to never scream? We're going to teach a child to never leave a room unless he's told to. We're going to teach a child to never act out. No, you can't do that. What you want to do is you want to create an environment where they don't have to use those behaviors, but we're not going to take the behaviors away, because something might happen in your child's life where screaming and acting out would be a good thing. If he suddenly was in the mall and someone tried to take your child away and he starts screaming and acting out, you're going, good, that's good. That's what we teach people to do. So we want to make sure that they don't have to use the screaming and acting out, but we're not going to get rid of it. If they need to use it sometime, it's still going to be there. And we can't take away the one behavior a child uses if the only thing they have to get the teacher's attention is to poke her. We can't say, well, we're going to stop that child from poking. We don't want to do that anymore. So we want to make sure that we're really being careful about what we take away. This one is for parents. Does it interfere with the child learning or the way you want to parent or teach? If you like being a parent that says, when I tell you to do something, you better do it right now, that's your parenting style, you might have to look and decide that maybe my parenting style is not going to work for that child. And it's also very important to decide if a child would change if they could. Sometimes kids need that behavior and they're not going to change. So trying to force them into changing behavior will not help unless you can really redo the environment again so they don't need to use it. And this last one is my favorite. Would it be easier to educate the rest of the world about why the behavior occurs than to change the behavior? That high school student, easier to educate the entire high school. When he gets upset, he's going to leave the room and go to a safe place and talk to a counselor or someone. That's going to happen. Teach even the subs. It's easier to tell a sub than to try to change that behavior for this child. I worked at a church, and there was a man there who had developmental disabilities, would only sit in one pew in one place in that church. That was his seat. It was easier to educate 300 people not to sit in that seat, and it was easier to educate anybody who came in that church not to sit in that seat than it was to teach this man to sit in a different seat. So we did that. So always remember, if you can change, you do it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, last week I talked a little bit about Ross Greene, and as far as, if the child could do it, they would. I mean, it's like so many times I think teachers feel like, it's the child's problem, and if they would make better choices, if they would be more responsible, this wouldn't happen. And to me, that points out that there's skills that child doesn't have right now. And can we teach those skills? Or like you just said, are there ways that we try to, change the culture of this is going to work for this, instance, and we're going to be the ones that are going to be flexible. We have some more people that have joined us. I want to say hey to Lynn from Colorado, and Brandy was asking if this video will be available later so she can watch the whole thing. And yes, the replay will stay up on my Facebook page. I did have a couple other questions, Chris, so I thought maybe when you change slides, this might be a good breaking point. So Lissa, who lives up by you, said, my son's called me on his cell phone from the locker room in an anxiety attack, hiding from the teachers and everyone at the school. Let's see, I got to make sure I'm reading this. So he called from the locker room in an anxiety attack, hiding from the teachers and everyone at school. Sometimes you as a parent are the only ones that can help. And I think that's, she's referencing being able to have access to calling, and that can be something specific that you write in the behavior plan. So teachers know that that's a permissible thing, and it's not up to debate or judgment, but that's really something that's going to happen. And then Dana is asking about a child that has ADHD, dyslexia, 7 years old with a 504 plan, but nothing to address behavior. The child gets in trouble for talking daily and has to spend recess time walking laps and doing makeup work. Is there a better way to address this, since this obviously has to do with the ADHD?
Yes, there's a better way. They shouldn't be doing that. Those are all punishers. And if they have to use the punisher more than once, then it's not working. Once in a while, you'll have a child that you say, okay, you have to stay in for recess. One time of staying in for recess, and they will never do whatever they did again because that worked. So if you want to try a punisher one time, not mean punisher, but if you want to say, okay, you're going to walk laps one time, and then they never do it again, whatever it was, give it a shot. But if you don't think it's going to work, or if they do the same behavior again the next day or the next week, don't use the same punisher. It didn't work, and it's never going to work. I'm sorry, you can't say, well, now he's going to learn because he's done it 20 times. No, he's not learning. All he's learning is he's probably getting very physically fit because he can walk laps better. So we want to make sure that we're not going to punishers first. That's not, you give it, like I said, you can do it quick and dirty. I don't have anything against that. If you say, go to the principal's office, and sometimes I've sent a little child with Down syndrome, I said, go have the principal yell at her. So she'll go down there, and you have to coach the principal. Don't play into her cuteness because she's adorable and you're just going to love having her come to your office. But, speak to her harshly, and then the child goes back and you don't see the behavior again because, whoa, yes, I got in trouble. But that's very rare. Usually the child enjoyed being with the principal and immediately goes back and does the behavior again to go see their new friend. So be careful of punishers. They don't work and then they'll backfire on you. So no, your child shouldn't be asked to do any of those things. It's obvious your child's having trouble with the classes and he needs to have a plan, a good prevention plan to help him say, I can't do it. Some kids who are really understand their capabilities, you can put little coins on their table, chips, and they can just slip a red chip out there to tell you it's too much. So when you go back and they're not working, you look at the red chip, they've made a decision not to work. They've thought about it. And then you can go and call them and say, what's going on? How can I help you? If you can't get to them right away. So it's a nice physical way for them to let you know and a visual way for you to spot it and deal with it. And sometimes that's all teachers need is, how do I know? By the time I get to the problem, he's already acting out and doing something. So what was the first one you said was?
Let's see. I'll scroll back here. The first one I think was talking about her son being able to call when he was in the locker room having an anxiety attack, and I was saying if
Right,
she can make sure that that's actually written in the behavior plan.
So I just had a parent I talked to the other day, and she said the school called her about something, I don't know, some ridiculous behavior that a 6-year-old was doing. How bad can that be? They're 6. And she said the principal said, well, I'll get back to the team and see what we can come up with. And I said, here's what you do when the principal says that. He says, I'm going to talk to the team. You leave a pause. You go, and then you very quietly said, that would be me. So the principal, oh, yeah, you're part of the team. I've got to get back to you on it. So you say, that would be me. And let them realize once again that, no, you don't go back and talk to the teachers about this, a decision of whether or not the child's going to use a cell phone to call his mom. That's a team decision. And if it's a very, I don't know why that's such a problem for schools, but I do run into this a lot where they don't want them calling mom. We want to deal with it here. That's how all principals talk. We want to deal with it here. I don't know if that's true or not. And you're like, but why? This child needs that safety net. They need to call their mom. The mom's not going to say, well, you go tell the principal where you can, put the cell phone. They're not going to do that. They're going to say, you need to relax. You need to calm down. Go back and talk to your teacher. Parents are going to give very good advice to their children and get them, diffuse it, and then the child can go on. And they're also going to hear the child say, I want to come home. And they're going to know, okay, that's genuine. They need to come home. So yes, it goes in the IEP, it goes in the behavior plan. The child that's on the 504 that doesn't have the behavior plan, ask for a functional behavior analysis. Tell me when a behavior plan. If they say we don't give it to children with 504, say, I want a functional behavior. Say it again. I want a functional behavior analysis. I want the behavior evaluated. If he does have a significant behavior problem, then he goes on an IEP, and he can do that just for behavior. But a 504, you usually can have a behavior plan under accommodations with a 504 plan. So you have to ask in writing, and Charmaine will tell you all these things. Write a note to the teacher, put it on the principal's desk, send an email saying, did you get the note? I sent you the note. I assume you're going to do it. And then they have, in Idaho, I think it's 30 days to comply to that. I'm not sure, Charmaine, how long it is in Idaho, but
Right.
they have to do it.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point too about, school policies about cell phones, and, sometimes the typical discipline, plan, or, outcomes or rules that are written in the student handbook are kind of ridiculous. And it's like, how do we make sure that our kids with disabilities can be exempt and have that individualized, behavior plan that they deserve? And so one instance that just came up with a mom that I'm working with is her daughter would call because there were times when, as a punishment, she would have to sit in the lunchroom, and if she wasn't actually picking up her food and eating, she had to have her hands folded in her lap and she had to be quiet. And it was called silent lunch. And so the mom, said, I'm going to come and take you out for lunch. We're going to just kind of get away, just kind of calibrate here. Well, she heard that if the parent takes a child out to lunch, it's an unexcused absence. And so I always tell parents, when you hear something like that that just sounds pretty ridiculous, ask for the written policy. Well, come to find out, there is a written policy in this school that if the student leaves campus with the parent at lunchtime, I mean, it's that specific, it's an unexcused absence, and you can only have so many unexcused absences. But to me, then this is something that we need to address at the next meeting, because that isn't going to be supportive and helpful for her. And so I think parents need to know that you can ask that typical, behavior rules in the school don't apply to your child. And I don't know if you have any other situations that you can give as examples for that, Chris.
Well, most of the time when a child gets a behavior plan, it's sort of unsaid that the school discipline policy is not going to be used because you have this other plan in place now. So when someone starts falling back on the school-wide discipline, you go, no, it's in his IEP or in his 504. This is what we're going to follow. The hard part for parents to realize who have not been involved in all the legal aspects of it, you are a member of the team. You have a right to make decisions along with everybody else, and then you have due process if you don't like the decisions, which nobody else has. You can actually go forward and say, I want it done differently. But it is up to the parent. There's no law that says a school has to write an IEP a certain way. There's no law that says things have to be done a certain way. The law simply says if you don't like it, you can go due process and have it done a better way if the hearing officer says you're right, that didn't meet your child's needs. So parents, it's on you. If you don't like what the school is doing, don't go, well, that's illegal. They have to do that. No, they don't. It's child by child. It's not across the board, and it's up to you to walk in and say, I want this done for my child. And you have to use advocates to help you. You can't think that that's going to just, because it's written and you read the laws and you went on a website where it said all these things, you can't assume that's really going to be how it's done. Not.
Right.
So, we're going to run out of time here, aren't we? And, so let's just talk about what can you do to prevent the behavior, and then I'm going to move on to the next slide here, which is about data. And I really want to stress this. You can't change a behavior unless you've identified what the behavior is very specifically, and you have to have it measurable. We all know that. I mean, that child's just disrespectful. That's not a behavior. I can be disrespectful to you, and it's just not a behavior. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes a child is rude. Well, that's not really a behavior I can say that is objective, because what's rude to you, I might go, oh, thanks for letting me know that, and just feel that the child is being very emphatic. So you want to make sure that your data is on a behavior that you can measure. So hitting, running, leaving the classroom, those are things that everybody can see. They actually did it, and we can determine that it's a problem. So, but you have to know, as I said, is it bad enough to do anything about it? So how many times did they leave the classroom? How many times did they get up out of the chair? Always compared to everybody else in the classroom. Your child, because they have a disability, doesn't have some other crazy standard where they have to sit and work on a computer for 30 minutes while everybody else gets to wander around the room, pick out books, color pictures, play with toys, but they have to stay put because they don't know how to do those things without assistance, so we're not going to let them do it. Your child gets to be just as bad as everybody else in the classroom, and that's important for people to look at, because we think, oh, they're, every kid in that classroom is sitting and paying attention. That's another thing you want to look at. Maybe your child is drifting off, not paying attention. You've probably done it while I'm talking. I hardly believe that, but you might have. And if you look at the classroom, and that's why it's good to have someone come in and observe that knows how to do it. I do 2-minute observations, what that child is doing and what all the other kids are doing. And a lot of times all the other, maybe at any point when a teacher's doing 20 kids, teaching 20 kids, maybe 5 of them are actually paying attention. The other 15 are, they've gone to their happy place, they're looking in their desk, they're talking to a neighbor. They're still kind of hearing, they don't miss that much. The difference is a typically developing child can go in and out and still pick up most of the information to move on. And they can ask when they've missed something. And that's where a child with a developmental disability is going to miss a lot when they drift off or get up and walk around, and then they're not going to get back into it. So there'll be a huge gap, and then they won't come back to it. So we really want to make sure that they're getting what you want out of the class. But if no one's paying attention to the teacher, don't expect this child to pay attention, because the teacher's boring and nobody's doing it. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at data, we're taking data not only on your child, but on what's going on in that room. And then we're going to talk about prevention. I think I might have gone right by it. The prevention. Well, my slides are not coming up right here. So we're going to talk about prevention and how can you prevent things from happening. And this slide was supposed to do this amazing stuff, and it didn't. So I will just read behind the lines there. You can change the environment. That's number one. You change the environment. You bring in picture schedules. You put a child who can't sit still because you've got them right in front of you at the beginning, in the front of the room, or a child that's circled that keeps talking to you and bothering you. You put that child in the back of the circle or the back of the room where they can see what everybody else is doing. Oh, we're all sitting at the circle. Then you're going to change what you're asking the child to do. So maybe what you're asking the child to do is way too much. So you're going to change your demands for your child. And that's very important, because we often ask way too much of a child with a disability. We think, oh, well, they understood it. I know they know what the expectation is, and maybe they understood yesterday. Maybe in that situation they were fine, but today they might be stressed about something else. Today their shoes might not feel good, their socks might have little lumps in them, who knows, but you're asking too much. So you're going to cut down on what you're asking the child, so you know you can always ask more, but you need to start out with the demands being pretty minimal until you get to where you know that child's comfortable. You're going to change your curriculum. Teachers will often use the wrong curriculum with children. They'll have everybody's doing this reading curriculum, and then you'll go in and you say, here, why don't we try this, the EdMark curriculum, which is an all visual way to learn how to read. So let's put that in place. Well, we don't have that curriculum. Well, let's get that curriculum. You need to have people go in and look at your child and say, this is a child that's going to learn to read visually. Why are you spending 3 hours a day on phonics? It's not going to happen. And he's not going to learn to spell with phonics. Stop doing it. Stop making them learn the sounds of all the letters. Just teach them the words with some of these other strategies. So the person coming in and looking at the curriculum has to say, your curriculum doesn't work for this child. You need to change your curriculum. And that doesn't mean this child needs to go into self-contained program. It doesn't mean this child needs to go to resource room. It means that you need to bring a different curriculum into your classroom. I did have a teacher once that said she only taught third grade, because I teach third grade reading in my third grade class. I said, to everybody? She said, yes. I said, well, what if they read above third grade? That's what I teach. I went, okay. That made it very difficult to adapt the curriculum because she was very emphatic about it. Your instructional pace can change. You don't have to have everybody in your classroom working at the same pace with instruction. You can make sure what you give this child for instruction, you really kind of get over there and hit him kind of hard and heavy with things that you know he needs to learn. And then you can slow down the rest of it and say, okay, you got that. So try doing that one problem, and everyone else can be moving on to things that are a little bit more complicated. And then you have to individualize reinforcement. You cannot have classroom behavior plans that you think they're going to work for this child. When everybody's good, we put, something in the jar. I don't know, whatever they're doing now for reinforcing kids, we give out the Cub cards or money they have that they can turn in. That's not going to mean anything. If you're the child that never gets the little tokens across the force you, and it probably doesn't work. What reinforces you is what keeps you doing something. So I'm going to end on this. So if you want to reinforce your child, you look at, does that keep them sitting still? So if they're trying to do their homework and you put a little iPod in there with some music going, and they sit there and work harder on their assignment, that's a reinforcer that works. They keep doing it. If you have some snacks that they can eat one while they're doing it, they get to eat a little bit while they're doing their homework, that's a reinforcer that works. It's not a reward. It's what keeps you doing it, and it's what happens while you're doing it. A comfortable cushion, a room that's comfortable, never do homework in a room by yourself. You put them at the kitchen table, and then they keep doing it. Okay, that's a reinforcer. So these are some ways you can just kind of prevent behavior problems and change things to help prevent the behavior problems. And I think we need to probably wind it up now. Any more questions?
Yes, we do. And I love your ideas of as adults, there's things that we can change and that we have control over. The curriculum we teach, the environment that we have, the rules that we set up, and all of that as adults we can change for kids. And that to me is so much better than thinking that the child is the problem and that the child has to do something differently. I think as adults, we can do that and we can help kids. So yeah, there are a couple other questions here. So Brandy, let me see. So Brandy says, thanks so much. Her son has a BIP, but it's so vague, I don't feel like it's any use. The district used a behavior therapist that is just a teacher with extra training, not a BCBA therapist. Any suggestions? Her son is in, just a minute, I have to, let's see. Her son is 7 years old in second grade, but it's self-contained and he only goes to general ed for a few blocks of time that he cannot even handle that some days.
Okay. So the behavior plan, I'm not sure what his behaviors are, but if you don't feel that it's working, and I'm going to tell you this, join my club, join the Chris Curry Club, send me the behavior plan. I'll look it over, give you some suggestions of what you can do. And if you bring suggestions back to the school that really work and they're very well defined, I just had to talk to a special ed teacher who we said this child needs to get he needs to be assessed orally in high school. And he said, we're doing that. We're asking him the questions. I said, no, you need to have a conversation with him. And I had to actually, make up a conversation how that would work. And then he went, oh, that might be really helpful. So a good behavior plan is going to be one that people look at and go, oh, that's going to really change things. And yeah, I would love to help you with that. So go to my
Cool.
website.
Yeah, so if you want to switch off your screen, the other
Okay.
question I had was from a parent who couldn't be here live because she works at night and has to sleep during the day. But she had talked about her daughter having separation anxiety, and it is really hard. And the mom is trying to get the teacher and the HI worker on the same page as far as when the daughter sees the mom, she wants to spend time with her. She doesn't want to then have to leave and go to school. And so I don't know how old her child is, and sometimes it can be really tricky to try and, give suggestions when you don't have all of the information. But, if we just looked at maybe the issue of getting the staff on board, everybody doing the same thing, and then if you have any tips about separation anxiety with kids.
So, well, first of all, she probably needs a visual schedule so that every morning she has a routine that she follows with or without mom. And it doesn't change because mom's there or mom's not there. And she knows she's got that security, kind of put the security with her mom. And I didn't talk enough about visual schedules, but and it doesn't mean the pictures. Visual schedule can be written, but it's a schedule and it should be on an iPad or something that they can use and keep with them. The other thing is if she doesn't see her mom all day, so her mom goes to work at night, I believe that was it, and then her mom is there in the morning, she wants to see her, set up a time to reward her at school with some FaceTime with her mom during the day. And just just say, here, talk to your mom, because that would be something that she could do and see her mom even though she had to leave her in the morning and be fun. I think we have to be creative when we have families who have different styles of getting it to work. Like I have to work at night.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And that's the thing with technology. It is amazing. I mean, teachers can take a quick photo of your child doing well, text it to you, and you can immediately know things are going well, as much as possible to celebrate those successes that our kids are having in school and not only hearing from the teacher or the principal when things aren't going well. That makes a huge difference. But I really encourage our viewers and people that will watch on the replay to check out Chris's website, and I'll make sure I put the link for that. If you want her PowerPoint, just type in PowerPoint in the comments, and after the video's done, I'll give you the link. And yeah, her consulting services that she offers for families are so reasonable, and you will reap so many benefits from it. And I love that Chris comes from a place of how we can include students and make that successful in general ed. And that's a value that I share. And if that's a value that you also share as a parent, then I really encourage you to get in touch with Chris and start making some positive changes for your kids. So thank you so much, Chris, for taking time and being with us today. I'm excited that through technology you can work with parents throughout the country. I know as an advocate, I also do that, where I virtually attend IEP meetings with parents in other states. So don't let somebody's location be a roadblock into getting help and getting another voice at the table to help you advocate for your kids. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted to say that next Thursday I'm going to be doing a show, and I'm going to talk more about the functional behavior assessment part of, and it's like, well, today we talked about the behavior plan, but yeah, part of it is also making sure, like Chris said, that we get the good data and we have some observations and all those kinds of things. So we'll talk about that next Thursday at noon Mountain Time. But Chris, do you have any final words for us as we wrap up our show?
Just remember, and one of my final slides says, you only remember the moments that are meaningful in your life. So don't make the moments you don't want to remember meaningful. So remember that. If you can just make those things that are on,
yes,
you don't want to ever think about again, don't put a lot of drama in those.
Yes.
So that's
yes.
it.
Thank you so much. So thanks for being here, and we shall see people next Thursday at noon Mountain Time. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your kids. Have some positive times with them this weekend and make good, happy memories, right?
Right.
Take care. Bye-bye.